Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a special cabinet. Good to see you again, many of you. We are here today to consider and receive the call-in that was considered by the Economic Development and Select Committee on the 5th of January this year regarding the sale of the County Hall site Crosskeeliog and the revised bids. Sorry, remiss of me. Welcome those at home who are looking in. Just for formality, I'm Peter Fox, Leader of the Council. I'll just ask my Cabinet colleagues to introduce themselves quickly.
Councillor Phil Murphy, Cabinet Member for Resources.
Councillor Liz Hackett-Payne, Cabinet Member for Education.
Councillor Brian Jones, Cabinet Member for County Operations.
Councillor Bob Greenland, Deputy Leader.
Councillor Jeff Burrows, Cabinet Member, Social Services.
Leader of the Oppositions, did you want to introduce?
Dimitri Petrini, Leader of the Labour Group.
Simon Howarth, Leader of the Independent Group.
Okay, thank you. And we're accompanied by several officers today. And could you introduce yourselves if you're asked to speak, please? Thank you. So we are here, as I mentioned, to receive the call-in that was considered by the Economy and Development Select on the 5th of January. Can I thank those members of that committee who considered this and gave it a significant challenge. We also joined today by Councillor Frances Taylor, who has formally in advance asked if she can contribute to the discussion, and I've agreed to that. So welcome, Frances. And I'll hand over to you then, Phil.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And this call-in centred around the Section 106 implications of the disposal of the County Hall site, or the old County Hall site in Cwmbran, for those looking in. The procedures for this disposal and demolition of this property and subsequent cleared land was set out quite a few years ago, where it was agreed that Torfaen would deal with the disposal of the land once Monmouthshire had sorted out knocking the building down. That happened, and Torfaen subsequently invited bids for the land and the development. After some ground conditions were found to be problematic, the preferred bidder decided that they wanted to adjust their figure. Torfaen, as was their right, decided that they would go back out to the original bidders, all of them, to enable them to be given the opportunity of coming back. The result of that process was that increased bids came in and a new bidder was selected. Now, the discussion, as I said, was around Section 106 monies, and the Section 106 monies, and in fact the whole of the potential receipt cannot yet be determined because, first of all, Torfaen Cabinet haven't decided on the detail, and in any event there's been no detailed planning application put in to give the officers there the opportunity of negotiating Section 106 agreements because of the application. Now, there is a schedule which has been provided helpfully by Roger Hoggins as to the anticipated Section 106 applications, but the point is that although there's some £700,000 that is potentially to be allocated out of the monies that the developer is prepared to pay for the site, because bear in mind Section 106 comes off the actual amount that the developer has set aside, that money accrues to the community in which the asset that is being disposed of lies, and that community is Torfaen. If it was the other way round, then obviously Monmouthshire would be looking to get that that negotiation in on its own behalf. So, as I said, Roger has issued quite a lot of guidance on the questions that were asked in Select. That's a quick sum up, Leader, of where we are at the moment, and I'll leave it up for the debate.
Thank you, Phil, and thanks, Roger, for supplying the additional information today. And perhaps I can invite you to share any further thoughts if you need to at this point, or
No, thanks.
you're okay.
As and when.
Okay, fine. As I say, thank you for the additional information. Whilst we were comfortable when we made the decision, obviously the addition of extra information helps further a deeper understanding. So we thank the Select Committee for the call-in. Colleagues, anybody wish to add to what Phil has already shared? No. Can I invite Councillor Petruni? No. Can I invite Simon? And I'll invite you then afterward, Francis.
Yes, Leader, and thanks for acknowledging that the call-in was a way forward in finding out more information. I am a little bit still concerned that the procurement document which did go out to the preferred bidders, I did ask the question there, it only went out to the people who were on the last procurement for the site because they felt that they were the only ones which would be available to bid for it. But as we all know, the parameters of this site did change, and I don't think even the cabinet was aware that actually Torvine's emphasis on the site was with the buffer zone of the wooded area, because it was an historic wooded area. That wasn't the case. That was proven different, even though the LDP said that, Torvine's LDP said that the buffer zone would be a prime area to be left. The parameters of the site did change, and I think one of the main concerns as well from the Select is we'll agree to one thing, we will send out for procurement, but at the end of the day, the site could increase in numbers. The inspector, when Torvine had their LDP examination, he was very clear, this site on numbers. Now the buffer zone has been lifted. I wanted to know, and I have asked the question actually, is there any protection in Monmouthshire that this site becomes, because it is a key site, Torvine, is there any protection for Monmouthshire reference to the numbers and the numbers game? We were informed by our head of planning that the 106s are a legal binding agreement and they have to go to Torvine, but we still believe that the best value out of this site hasn't been achieved for Monmouthshire. We take all the calculations, but that's where we were. The Select, Sarah isn't here, and I thought Sarah may have put the case forward from the Select, but the information, I think more than anything, the information that which we were having was agreeable to be present in the file, and it wasn't. And I think everything we've asked, I think, was very prudent of us, and I think that's why it came back to you, Leader. So I'm sure other members may want to ask a few questions on this, but I think we as an authority, as a key site, I would have preferred to have seen a lot more here, but we are where we are.
Okay, many thanks, Simon. I'll invite Francis to share her points.
Thank you, Peter. I just wanted to clarify in my own mind a couple of points, and I suppose I'd also be interested in any reflections about what we've learned through this, because I don't think, from what I've seen in terms of the papers I've looked at about what was anticipated when County Hall was, the decision was taken to dispose of County Hall, old County Hall, and to move here, it doesn't seem to me that what was anticipated then has necessarily been realised in terms of this capital receipt here. For a variety of reasons, but actually the differential seems quite great. So just a couple of things. So it says in the, I think the reason that the Select Committee agreed to bring it back to Cabinet was because they felt that there was a lack of information. And we certainly, during the call-in, we weren't able to get some of the information that was required, and that led us to think that there needed to perhaps be a bit more of a robustness around how officers, how we support officers to be part of that process. So out of this capital receipt then, just to be clear, the best case scenario at the moment, although this is subject to additional costs, is that Monmouthshire and Torfaen receive in the region of 2,544,000 if there is a 20% affordable housing, and then dropping to 2,331,000 if there is a 30% affordable houses. The net costs we've spent out to date on disposing of County Hall are 836,000. So the net gain for Monmouthshire at the moment, best case scenario, is £1.495 million. When I look back at some of the old papers, that's significantly lower than what was anticipated. And I think the other point is that this is still not necessarily determined. That figure could still change and be revised downwards. And the other point, I suppose, I just wanted some reassurance about and some clarity on is clearly we have Roger Hoggins as a member of the project board now. I wonder, it says it's been supported by other officers, but does that change? Have we got a mechanism in place now to ensure that, for example, if we've got a single officer responsible, that we're maintaining our operation? Because I still think that we could have learnt something about, if this is a 50-50 split, Torfaen are still getting their affordable housing allowance and Section 106 balances out of it. And our net gain is not as much as we thought. So can I have a reflection, for it, please, about what we might have learnt through the process? That would be helpful.
Okay, well, we'll give you some perspective. Any technical questions or any responses from officers? First off? No? Yeah, all right. Okay. Actually, I remember very, very early conversations around County Hall, along with Steve Greenslade in those days. Sadly, he's gone. And in those days, we were always we were in this dilemma. I remember those early conversations about, do we sell the site with a building on, or do we? And the conversation was debuild it then, which was a strange terminology, or recognising what was the best way of moving forward. But what was always recognised that if you left it built, the site was less valuable. It was better and safer to get it demolished and taken down. But there was always a recognition that there was going to be very little receipt out of this because of a lot of those costs at that time. But things have changed. Things always change. This is several years now. Things move on, and we always see these things crop up which we may not have foreseen early on. I'm comfortable with the report that was before us. I think it's been added to by the additional information, so I thank you for prompting that. I absolutely recognise, as much as it hurts, that the 106 money has to stay with the host authority, and if you turned it around on its head and it had been here in Monmouthshire and it was the other way around, we would have been very keen to make sure the 106 money stayed in Monmouthshire for exactly the same reasons. So, I think that case is flawed on the 106. So, this picture, actually, when I saw this report, I was relatively, whilst it's not a huge amount of money, I was relatively pleased that it was better than what was projected, not worse than was projected in the figures that I'd been subjected to in the earlier days. Colleagues, anybody else want to?
I think Roger would like to come.
Roger, which one? Yeah.
I was looking for reflections back on it. The reports which we provided to members replicated what was provided to Torfaen County Borough Council, so we're moving consistently through this. However, I would acknowledge that perhaps one of the lessons to pick up from myself at officer level is perhaps further information could have helped the decision process go through clearer. It's true the figure could still go up or down. It is down to the detail of the detailed plan application. In relation to officer representation, with Steve's death, it did change partway through. There were decisions early on, some years ago now, about the actual process and how it was going to be managed, and those were agreed early on, and this is consistent with that. Various officers are pulled into that group as required to advise the group, and will continue to do so as we get into the detailed aspect, albeit your recommendations now recommend that that be delegated in consultation with the cabinet member.
Councillor Greenland?
Just going back before the period when Peter, the chairman, the leader has just been referred to, I was in on this from the time that we first of all talked about leaving County Hall. And at that stage, there were quite large estimates of how much we would get for it. But that was very much on the basis that Torvine might consider retail development on the site rather than housing. That was the first thing. But it became obvious that that was not acceptable to Torvine, as is their right. And then, of course, there was a difference in the housing market, and we had the crash and everything else, and values seemed to go down of that site through that period of time. And I look at it as this: if the owners of that site was an independent landowner, they could not expect to get anything other than effectively what was left after 106 monies had been imposed by Torvine, as is their right. And I must be missing a point somewhere, because I don't quite understand, if you accept that it's the right of Torvine to put whatever 106 is they decide that they want on that, where do you think that we've gone wrong, and how might we have increased the net amount that we are to receive? I'm missing something, I think.
Okay, well, I'm not going to relive the call-in debate. That's all. We're receiving this now. We're receiving it with your views. You've asked us to consider it again in light of the further information. I think everybody recognising that the further information has been welcomed and adds clarity, and actually it helps the decision to be made again. So I'm going to move us to what will be. It's not a formal recommendation. Oh, sorry, Liz. I'm sorry. Did you want to come in now quickly? Sorry.
I was just going to pick up on the question asked, what have we learnt? And I think, personally, I think it shows the need for Select, and it also shows, by asking those questions, as a cabinet member, I feel I have thought about it again, and actually it has made me think about things that I perhaps hadn't thought about originally. And I can think back to when we were first told about the building would have to be demolished, and I can remember asking an awful lot of questions of Steve Greenslade, because I really believed that it was a waste of money to demolish the building. But actually, when the reasons were given to me, I could see why that was the case. And I'm sure we'll all remember what a state County Hall was in, and we were given a date when we had to move out, because in effect the concrete had cancer in it, and it was literally a health and safety issue. And when it was brought to my attention that that could be, if we left the building up, somebody could actually get in there, and there could be problems with the building falling down. Also, as well, there was an awful lot of asbestos in that building, which needed to be addressed, and it wasn't the best asbestos, it was just full of asbestos. So there were lots of things there that I hadn't appreciated originally. And reflecting on this, I can remember originally Steve Greenslade saying it would cost 1.2 million. It then came down to 1 million to actually raise the building to the ground. So in effect, we came out better on that than we had originally thought. So I think this whole process has been quite reflective, because it has made me spend even more time going over this and remembering what happened, because it was a while ago now. But I'd forgotten actually how bad a repair County Hall was in.
Okay, thank you, Liz. Okay, I'm going to. I think the best way probably to do this is to go back to the decision log and check that we as a cabinet are content with the decision we made prior to, or not. We have the original report before us if members wanted to discuss further. But I think from what I've heard, I'm not hearing a dissent from the original decision. So can I ask members if they're content to agree the original cabinet, the decision which is recorded in the cabinet log? Clearly it will be a new log to record what's happened in this meeting. Are we all in favour of that? Okay. Thank you very much. So that's carried. So the decision stands, albeit it's been enhanced by the discussion and the call-in. So thank you, everybody, for your contributions in that regard. And I declare this meeting closed.